everyone, I hope all of you are doing good. So today I am here with Conservation of Plants and Animals Part 1 Class 8 Science. I am Roshni from LearnerHub, the free learning platform where you get to study physics, chemistry, maths, biology absolutely for free at learnerhub.com. So what exactly are we going to study in this lesson? Well, we all know that our earth is special. Why? Because it supports life. And what's life? The plants and animals that we see all around us, they are life. And it is very, very, very important to conserve plants and animals, and that is exactly what we are going to study in this lesson. So are we all ready? Let's get started. So if you look at the variety, you will see that a huge variety of living organisms exist on Earth, and that is known as biodiversity. So the word bio means life and diversity refers to variety. So the variety of life forms on Earth is called biodiversity. So if you look at the huge variety, you see elephants, dogs, monkeys, rats, rabbits, tiger, lion. So do you think that all of them look very similar to each other? So if you compare their size, they look very different from each other. If you compare their behavior, their shapes, their voices, so everything seems so different from one another, but they all are living organisms. So many huge variety of animals. Not only that, even human beings, we are also part of a living organism. The tiny insects and the flies or the worms, they are also part of it. There is again a huge variety of organisms which live in water, whether in the marine water or in fresh water, but you see a large variety of fishes, dolphins, sharks, whales, octopus, starfish. So there are so many aquatic life forms also which exist on Earth. Not only that, you also have extremely tiny microorganisms like bacteria, fungi, which is not visible to our naked eye. And finally, a huge variety of plants, where you have so many flowering plants, so many non-flowering plants. Some of them are very short in height, some of them are like huge trees. So again, you have a very big variety of plants. So if you look at this, the screen obviously will not be able to accommodate the variety of life forms which exist on Earth. Now, do you think that it is going to be a tedious task to try to conserve each of these living organisms? Well, not really. That's because if we follow certain things in our life, if we follow certain principles in our life, we will be very well able to protect these huge variety of living organisms. So in this lesson, we are going to focus on how can we conserve or how can we protect the biodiversity, that is the variety of living organisms on Earth. So now something that is bothering you is, do we want to lose this rich diversity? Now that we saw that our planet is so very rich in the variety of living organisms, the planet is so very rich in diversity. So do we really want to make it poor? Do we really want to lose out some of the living organisms from the list? Well, not really. We don't think so that it should be done. So what should we do then? We should try to conserve them. Now it is something like, let us suppose that you have done a lot of hard work. So when you do a lot of hard work and then you earn something, I mean not necessarily money, but maybe you have done a lot of hard work from your side and that's how you have been able to score good in your exam. Maybe you scored 10 out of 10. So would you like to lose your marks just like that? You will not, right? Because you have done so much of hard work and that's why you are rich with good marks. So you don't want to lose it. So in a very similar way, our earth is already rich in the variety of living organisms which exist on it. So there is no point that we should let earth lose any of these organisms. Also, there are many advantages if there is a huge variety of organisms which exist on earth. So that is why we talk about biodiversity conservation. That is, how can we conserve this huge variety of life forms on earth. So let us first look at the importance of biodiversity to the ecosystem. So how conserving or how existence of biodiversity help our ecosystem. Now before we talk about the benefits, let me first explain you what is ecosystem. What is ecosystem? It is basically a system, the entire system consisting of the living organisms as well as the non-living components. They together form the ecosystem. So ecosystem would include all the plants plus all the animals plus all the microorganisms plus the non-living components like soil, water, air, which are essential for the survival of these living components. So all the living components plus the non-living components, they together form the ecosystem. Now each of these components depend on one another for their survival. So do you think that these organisms, the living organisms, whether it is plant, animal or microorganism, will they be able to survive if there is no soil, no water, no air? No, that is not possible. So the living components need the non-living components for their survival. So this entire system is known as ecosystem. So some examples of ecosystems are, like forest is an ecosystem because within the forest you have the non-living components like soil, water, air, etc. You also have living components like plants, insects, animals. So that makes up an ecosystem. Similarly, a pond is an ecosystem because within the pond you have everything, all the non-living components that are required for the aquatic animals for their survival, and you also have the aquatic organisms. So these living components of an ecosystem are called biotic components and the non-living components are called abiotic or non-living components. So you can say they are abiotic. So that was a brief introduction to ecosystem, because we will be using the term ecosystem very often when we talk about biodiversity. So I explained it to you. Now let us see how having a huge variety of living organisms help. So species diversity results in a more stable biological community. So what do we mean by more stable community? It is like different organisms, as I said, different living organisms, they depend on each other and also on non-living components for their existence and their sustenance. Like if you talk about human beings, we depend on other living organisms, sometimes for our food, sometimes for water, sometimes for our survival. Correct? For example, if you consider our food, some of us directly feed on plants or plant products, some of us feed on animals which eat plants. So directly or indirectly, we are dependent on other living organisms. So now when we have more variety of organisms, then the dependency on one particular organism reduces. For example, like let us say there are certain animals which feed only on plants. For example, if you consider rabbit. A rabbit feeds only on plants. Now, if you have more varieties of plants, then it is better for the survival of rabbits, right? So, similarly, there are other higher animals which feed on smaller animals like rabbit. So, if you have more variety of such animals, then the survival of those higher animals become easier. So, having a more variety helps in or adds to the stability of the entire biological community. So that is one advantage. Next is increased diversity results in increased productivity. So when you have more diversity, when you have more variety of living organisms, your productivity also increases because each group of organism is going to produce something. For example, if you talk about plants, so plants, they undergo photosynthesis and they produce food. So they are the primary producers. Now when you have more variety of plants, your productivity is definitely going to increase. Right? So each species will have a very important role to play in the entire ecosystem. So biodiversity boosts up the ecosystem productivity because when the number of organisms, when the number of species increases, the net productivity coming out of that ecosystem will also increase. Ensure sustenance of all life forms. Now, as I was telling, that all organisms are dependent on other organisms for their survival. So, if you see here, plants, they prepare their own food. Now, these plants are being eaten up by animals like goat or cow or rabbit. These animals in turn are eaten by bigger animals like lion or tiger. Now when all these plants and animals die, what happens? They become dead and decaying matter. This dead and decaying matter are then broken down and they mix with the soil. And who does this job? This is done by the decomposers. And who are decomposers? Primarily bacteria and fungi. They act as decomposers. So if you see, all these living organisms, they depend on each other. So when you have more variety of living organisms existing, it is better for the sustenance of all the life forms. Now, not only this, it also, the existence of a huge diversity also helps the environment. So we will see that a little later, that what would happen if the species start vanishing. Like, let us suppose, if right now on Earth there are, say, just an example, let us suppose there are 100 species of plants and animals existing on Earth. Now, if I say that I want to conserve biodiversity, that means I want to protect these 100 species of plants and animals so that they continue to exist in the future generations also. Now just imagine what would happen if I don't take proper care of the entire 100 species. Over a period of time, maybe 10 or 15 species will vanish. They will die off completely. So they will not reproduce further and the entire species will end, will cease to exist. They will not exist anymore. So instead of 100 species, now you are left with only 85 species. Now in such a situation, there is an adverse impact on the environment also. Now how, for example, let me take the example of plants. Now if the number of plants keep reducing due to some or the other reason, let us suppose if we start cutting down all the plants, now what will happen? Gradually the number of plants will keep decreasing. Now when the number of plants decreases, what happens? The amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will keep on increasing. When number of plants decreases, then the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will increase, because plants are the ones which take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during photosynthesis. Now when there are less plants, then there are less organisms to take in carbon dioxide, so the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will keep on increasing. Now when the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increases, what is carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. We learned about greenhouse effect in our previous lesson, right? So the greenhouse effect increases. Now when greenhouse effect increases, then what happens? The average temperature of the earth increases, which we call as global warming. Now when the average temperature of the earth increases, is it something good for the environment? No, this is not good for the environment. This is not good for the survival of living organisms on earth. So that means also, if the species diversity start reducing, it has an adverse effect on the environment. Now because of all these reasons, it is very important to conserve biodiversity, that is to protect the variety of living organisms existing on the earth. But unfortunately, there are certain threats to biodiversity. Even if we agreed that yes, we should conserve biodiversity, but there are certain threats, and unfortunately these threats are because of us, that is human beings. So human beings pose the greatest threat to biodiversity. We ourselves feel that yes, we should conserve biodiversity because human beings are considered to be the most intelligent species existing on earth. So we know that it is important to conserve biodiversity, but at the same time we are the ones who are putting biodiversity in danger. How? Have you ever seen that most of the forests are being cut down because of human needs? So it is the main cause of cutting down of forests on a larger scale is due to human beings, because human beings need trees for various purposes. We utilize the wood from the trees for building furniture, for constructing houses. We sometimes clean the entire forest, we cut down the entire forest to set up an industry or a factory there. Now sometimes we also want to cut down the forest for many other needs, because we use plants and plant products for various purposes in industries, in factories, for food items. So there are many uses, or there are many ways we utilize plants. So this cutting down of forests on a large scale is really bad. So this makes us sad. So when you get to know this, you feel that, oh no, that's bad, because I felt that conserving forest was very important. But now what I see is people like me, they are only cutting down trees, and that's how they are reducing the number of trees. And that is going to be a threat to biodiversity. So this cutting down of forests on a very large scale is known as deforestation. So deforestation is one of the most important causes which threaten biodiversity, because with deforestation we are actually we are directly cutting down the trees. So we are directly reducing the number of plants. So that is how we are impacting plants. Now when we cut down huge forests, then a lot of animals in that forest also are going to end, because they lose their habitat. So we are going to talk about deforestation in more detail now. We will see that why deforestation happens, how can we control deforestation. So we are basically going to deal with this entire problem of deforestation in this lesson, and then we will see that what are the various ways by which we can conserve, we can protect various plants and animals. So let us now talk about deforestation in detail. So what is deforestation? The name says deforestation. De means something which is opposite of forestation. Forestation means development of forests. So cutting down forests is deforestation. So it is permanent destruction or conversion of forest areas for other purposes. Now what would be these other purposes? So these other purposes could be establishment of industries and factories for various purposes. It could also be for utilizing the land for agriculture, so that more and more crops can be grown to feed the growing population. It could also be for development of residential apartments, because when the population is increasing, for the demand of people are also increasing. People need more food, people need their shelter. So the needs of the people are also increasing. Now to meet the needs of the people, what is happening is the forests are being cut down. Now when the forests are being cut down, that we are causing deforestation. And this deforestation in turn has many harmful effects, which are again indirectly harming us. So if you talk about India, so in India, it is supposed to be. Now what it should have been and what it is, there is a lot of difference between the two. So if you see here, the green portion denotes the area in India which was covered by forest, and the blue area denotes the area which is not forested. So this is how it was. I mean, in this case, almost 30% of the land was covered by forests, and this was the situation in the beginning of 20th century. So beginning of 20th century, 30% of the land area was covered by forests in India. Now what happened towards the end of the century, that means within 100 years, after 100 years what happened? Instead of forests increasing, now when your forest area increases, that means plants are increasing in number. Your greenery is increasing. Now increase in plants is good for the environment, but unfortunately by the end of 20th century, what was seen was that the forest area, the area covered by forest, reduced to 19%. So earlier it was 30%, now it reduced to 19%. Now you can imagine, if it keeps on reducing in this manner, then after a couple of centuries there will be no plants left on this earth. Now when there will be no plants on earth, it is very obvious that other animals will not be able to survive. That's because animals depend on plants directly or indirectly. So if plants don't exist, the animals will not be able to exist. So this tells us how serious the problem of deforestation is, and it is gradually taking place. I mean, with each year, the number of plants are continuously reducing. Now, Forget about the condition of India. If you look at the policy which is called the National Forest Policy, so there is a policy like this which tells what should be the area that should be covered by forests for the benefit of the environment. So as per this National Forest Policy, it says that 33% forest cover should be present for the plains, that means for the plain areas. And for the hilly areas where you have a lot of hills, like in India, if you look at the states like Himachal Pradesh, if you look at Kashmir, so there you have more of hilly areas. So for these kind of hilly areas, what should be the amount of forest cover? That should be 67%. And for plain areas, the forest cover should be 33%. So if you look at the actual scenario, you will see that even towards the beginning of the 20th century, the forest cover was only 30%, which was not meeting the law, or which was not meeting the requirement of National Forest Policy. And towards the end of 20th century, it reduced all the more. So anyways, towards the beginning of 20th century also, it was not meeting the requirement of National Forest Policy, and that too with time, that number also is continuously decreasing. So this is disastrous, because whatever has been suggested by National Forest Policy, we should try to meet that. Instead of meeting that, the number is already less, and we are reducing the number all the more. So now let us look at the causes of deforestation. What causes forests to get cut down? So as I said that human beings are one of the major causes, because human activities is the main cause behind deforestation. Now why do human beings do that? Because of overpopulation. Because the population is increasing very rapidly. Now when the population increases, then the demands of the people also increases. So earlier if you had 3 people, just an example. So the needs of the 3 people for food, shelter, clothing will also be less. But when the number 3 increases to 30, so the demand of 30 people will also increase. You need more space for their shelter. You need more crop to meet their food requirements. You also need more furniture for each of their needs. So as the population increases, their demand increases. And a lot of products are obtained from plants, for making furniture, for fuel, for fertilizers, for agriculture. So a lot of dependency is there on the forests. Next is agriculture. Again, due to overpopulation, if food requirement increases, we want to produce more crop. So in order to increase crop productivity, we need to have more agricultural land. So as a result, the forests are being cut down to convert the land into agricultural land. Human settlements. Now, these increasing number of people, where are they going to stay? So they need houses. So to have those residential apartments, so from where do we get the space? So they cut down trees and they develop residence. Making furniture. So you would have seen most of the furniture at your home is made up of wood. Different varieties of wood are available, like teak wood, plywood, and so many other varieties. So these furniture like chairs, tables, bed, so all these things are made up of wood. So whenever you want to make new furnitures, you need wood. So where is the wood coming from? It is coming from the forests. Fuel. Wood also acts as an excellent fuel, and fuel is required for cooking purposes by human beings. So that ways also they are dependent on forests. Forest fires. The forest fire could be another cause. Like sometimes what happens, and what the data says is, thousands of trees are lost every year due to forest fires. Now these forest fire happens mostly due to extreme warm summers and milder winters. That means when the temperature is more towards the higher side. So during summer, if it is extremely hot, and winters are also not very cold, so in that case there are chances that the forest wood might catch fire. So that is one natural cause by which forests can get destructed. However, forest fires can also be caused by human beings. So you see that in all the causes, human beings have a role to play. So they are human beings, that is, we are the main culprit behind deforestation. establishment of industries and factories, because these industries and factories, they produce a variety of goods. For example, if you talk about something like paper, so how do we manufacture paper? So paper is manufactured in paper factories. So that is one thing. So the factory is going to cause pollution to the environment. So for setting up that factory, you need space. So all those things are there. On top of that, what is the raw material for manufacturing paper? That is wood pulp. So paper is produced from wood pulp. So that means if we want to manufacture paper, we not only need to set up an industry. For that purpose we need land, etc. You also need wood pulp. That means you also need to cut down trees so that you can obtain the wood pulp to manufacture paper. So paper is not the only substance which is manufactured by human beings. There are a lot of substances getting manufactured in industries and factories, and setting up these industries and factories are often at the cost of cutting down forests. Now let us look at the harmful effects of deforestation. So we saw what causes deforestation, so we know. But we should also know what are the harmful effects of deforestation, so that we understand why do we need to stop deforestation, or how should we try to compensate the deforestation. So first is loss of species. Now what happens is, when we cut down the forests on a larger scale, so you are actually finishing off one complete forest. Now there are a lot of animals, lot of birds, insects which were living in that forest. Now when you cut down the forest, you are actually altering, or you are actually snatching away the habitat from all those animals. So those animals lose their habitat. So they do not have food, they do not have shelter. So a lot of species are lost. So they are not able to survive and they all die. Now sometimes it also happens that some species are specially present in that particular forest or in that particular area. For example, if you would have ever heard of the Panchmari National Park. So there you have certain species which are unique to that place. So those species like the giant squirrel, a squirrel which is very big in size, it is something which is very exclusively found in that place. So if that particular area is completely destructed, what will happen? Those squirrels will also die, because they will lose their habitat, they will lose their food, their source of food, that environment. Now when they die, since those species are not present anywhere else, so we are actually going to lose that species forever. So a lot of species are lost because they lose their habitat due to loss of habitat. Soil erosion. Now when trees are present, the roots of the trees, they hold the soil in a tight way. So soil erosion cannot take place. Now when we start cutting down trees, so we are left with lesser number of trees or no trees in that area. So this allows the top layer of soil to get easily washed away by water. So whenever there is rainfall, or whenever you irrigate the soil, whenever there is water basically in that area, now there is nothing which can hold the top layer of soil tightly, because the roots are no more there. We have already cut down the plants. Now the soil is very loose and it can get easily carried away by water. Now what happens when the soil gets carried away easily? The fertility of the soil is lost, because fertility of soil is due to the presence of humus which is present in the top layer of the soil. Now that layer itself gets washed away. So there is no humus in the soil, there is no fertility. Now when the fertility is lost, what is going to happen? So your fertile land which had fertility, so that fertile land is going to get gradually converted into hard rocks, and these rocks over a period of time, this will result in the formation of deserts. So this will lead to desertification of that area. So agriculture will no more be possible in that area, because fertility is completely lost. So this is another consequence of deforestation. So deforestation can lead to desertification. Increased concentration of carbon dioxide. So when we cut down the plants, what do plants do? Plants take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere for photosynthesis. So when we have lesser number of plants, or we don't have plants, so there is nobody which can take in the carbon dioxide from atmosphere. Therefore, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere will increase. And we know that carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. What is a greenhouse gas? That means this gas or carbon dioxide helps to absorb infrared radiation and thus helps to increase the temperature of the earth. Now, if carbon dioxide increases too much, then the temperature of the earth will also increase too much. Correct? So, that is one disadvantage, that due to increased concentration of carbon dioxide, this will result in global warming. That is, the average temperature of Earth will keep on increasing and gradually it will reach a temperature which is not suitable for the survival of living organism. So that is one disadvantage. The next disadvantage is too much increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide can also lead to pollution. It will add on to pollution factors. So that ways also carbon dioxide increase in its concentration is not advantageous. In fact, it is disadvantageous for the environment. Lowered groundwater level. Now, when the plants have been removed, then the level of groundwater also reduces. Destroy forest ecosystem. So the entire ecosystem of the forest, because the plants are being cut down, so the animals can't survive without them, so that entire ecosystem is spoiled. Possibility of flood increases. Why? Because when plants are present, the roots of the plants hold the soil tightly, and because of this, the water holding capacity of the soil is also more. Now, when there are no plants, so the soil is like left loose. So the soil gets easily carried away by water, and also the water holding capacity of the soil reduces. So water holding capacity of soil decreases. Now, when the water holding capacity of soil decreases, what will happen? Whenever there will be rainfall, the soil will not be able to hold water. It will not be able to retain water. So, water movement from the soil into the ground will also decrease because the soil is not able to hold enough water. So, what will happen? There will be more water on the surface. So, that is what we call as flood, because whenever the water holding capacity of the soil is good, in that case, water will be taken in by the soil will hold a lot of water, and then it will pass the same water into the ground, and that is how the groundwater level will also increase. But now, since there are no plants, so soil is not able to hold enough water, so water is also not penetrating into the ground, so most of the water is present on the surface, and that is causing flood. Therefore, possibility of flood will increase. Also, possibility of drought will increase. Now, this might sound contradictory because flood means lot of water, in fact water logging, and drought is lack of water or lack of rainfall. Basically, drought is lack of rainfall or less rainfall, that is called drought. So on one side it will increase floods possibility because water retaining capacity of soil is not good. So if there is too much of rainfall, in that case there will be flood which will cause destruction. In case there is lack of rainfall, how lack of rainfall? Because when the carbon dioxide concentration increases, now when the number of plants decreases, so number of plants reduces, so what will happen? The concentration of carbon dioxide will increase. Now when the concentration of carbon dioxide increases, then the greenhouse effect increases. Now when greenhouse effect increases, then the average temperature on the earth also increases. Now when the average temperature on the earth increases, so the earth is actually getting warmer. Therefore, the chance of rainfall decreases. So that is one way to think of it. There is another way is, these plants, what do? They undergo transpiration. In transpiration, they lose some water to the atmosphere. So they add moisture to the atmosphere. How? By transpiration. So they add moisture to atmosphere. Now when there are no plants, then the moisture in the atmosphere decreases. So moisture, it is no more adding a moisture, instead the moisture in the atmosphere is decreasing. That means the presence of water vapor in the atmosphere is decreasing. That means the clouds are less. So when you have lesser clouds, then what will happen? You will have lesser rainfall. Because what is cloud? Cloud is nothing but water vapor present in the atmosphere. And this water vapor is due to the moisture which is present in the atmosphere. So plants also contribute to the moisture present in atmosphere. Now when you don't have plants, so there is nobody contributing to the moisture. So the contribution to the moisture decreases. So the amount of moisture in the atmosphere decreases. The amount of clouds in the atmosphere decreases, and therefore the amount of rainfall will also decrease. So that means the chances of drought will also increase.
I hope you found the video useful, and if you really understood the concept well, do write in the comment section that concept hua crystal clear. And I will see you all very soon with a new topic and a new video. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.